items, after which members of the audience can come up and ask questions or make comments about that particular item at that time. I'll recognize you from the audience. You can come up, state your name and address, and then you may ask your questions or provide your comments on that particular item only. I would like to make two announcements tonight. The first deals with the special action meeting that was originally scheduled for tonight. That has been postponed, and the items that were originally on there, the earned income tax and passing the preliminary budget, will be delayed. The vote on those until next Thursday at our regularly scheduled action meeting. We haven't gone totally through the budget yet. We want to try to refine that as much as possible before we vote on the preliminary budget. The second thing is that we've had several executive sessions in the past few nights, specifically the last two nights, to discuss personnel matters. And I think there was one last Tuesday night after the budget meeting also on personnel matters. So those notwithstanding. And public financial management will also be here for the presentation that was originally scheduled for tonight at the action or the committee meeting. They'll present that on the 18th. So we'll finish up the budget review tonight. We left the best for last. Mr. Schmidt, for personnel. Go through your items, please.
You promised me this is going to be the last one, though, right?
I just said we were saving the best for last. I didn't say how long the last would last, so to speak.
I'd like you to turn to page 32, which is where I want to pick up from the last time, and it talks about gifted. On the top line at 12010, we indicate the elementary gifted. We have 7.5 teachers that teach at the elementary level, so that those salaries represent 7.5 different people. And again, I caution you to when you try to make some of the comparisons from budget to budget, it's difficult for a lot of different reasons. In this particular case, we're talking about next year several different people that will be teaching gifted differently with lower salaries than the ones that are teaching this year, so that it does not reflect any change in staffing. At the secondary level, that same thing is true, and that represents approximately 30 different people throughout the secondary buildings, several of which are full-time people. 100% of their time is dedicated to the gifted program. Others that range from a low of about 28% of their time to 42% of their time to 56% of their time. So that, again, we've not done anything different. We've not added positions or added any kind of improvements to that program at this point in time. I'd say the same thing as we said before. If you want to stop me as we go along, it may be easier than waiting till the end. I'd like to turn to page 37. And at the top of the page, the second salary, 14019, Chapter 1, that reflects 8.5 people at it reflects 8 people at half salary, and it also reflects, and I think that Dr. Fike mentioned this the other night, one new position. As you know, these monies are captured back for us from the Chapter 1 funding, so that we have 8 different people that will be assigned to half-time positions with the Chapter 1 people, Chapter 1 program. If you would turn to page 43, the top of the page, 21001. For the first time, we see an administrative salary. In the budget, administrative salaries have been budgeted at 3.2%. I won't repeat this throughout all the different administrative salaries because I think it would be redundant, perhaps boring. But that does not necessarily imply that everybody's going to get 3.2%. It merely implies that based on all the people we have in positions this year, there will be 3.2% of monies to be divided according to the administrative compensation plan. You know, I believe that within the very near future, the administrative organization will be meeting with representatives from the board to talk about their salary and fringe benefits. It's an opportunity that is afforded to them. As a matter of fact, it's mandated by law. so that the meeting discussed with the administrators will occur very soon. But for the purpose of having monies in the budget to talk about, everything has been budgeted 3.2%. The second line, 21023, I'm sorry, the first line is the Director of Student Services Special Ed. The second line represents 4 different people, the 3 special ed supervisors as well as the supervisor of gifted. If you turn now to page 46, this is guidance services. At the top, I'll just hit that quickly, the summer services. And if you have serious questions that you need to ask about this, then Judy will be happy to tell you about it. But there are monies that are set aside every year because of the counseling services we need throughout the district. Down below that, you'll see counselors for elementary, Pembroke, Penfield, Penndale, North Penn Senior High School. Again, these represent the same numbers of people that we've had in these positions this past year. On page 50, the top of the page, home and school visitor. That's 1 person, 1 position. That is a certified position, meaning that that person is a member of the bargaining unit. And on page 52, at the top of the page, you'll see the psychological services. At the 21017, we have throughout the district 5 school psychologists. We're maintaining the same number. You'll see that the numbers are a little bit different there in terms of budget to budget. That's because we're budgeting this year 4 at the elementary level, 1 at the secondary level. But please understand that those assignments represent psychologists that are assigned to all the different buildings in the district, not just 4 of them full-time at the elementary level.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Is this the position that's the state mandate that you must have so many psychologists for every number of students in the district? And if so, are we going to have to add one because of growth?
We don't have to add one, and the state mandate is 1 in 2,500.
Okay. I mean, all right. So
So-
when we break it out like this, it's just kind of a, I'll use the word arbitrary breakout as to where we assign them?
Pretty much so. I try and balance the load every year depending on what the growth factor is in the buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Remember, too, as we said earlier, that we've done away with the category middle school, so that if we still had that as a category, we'd see this a little bit different. But it's no change in terms of numbers.
Fred, as I look at this though, contrary to the other positions where you said middle school generally went with secondary, it looks like the funding from the middle school is shifting to elementary.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
Exactly right. That's what he
Page
said.
52, Fred.
Page 52, the psychologist, the elementary is moving from 127,802 to 261,000.
Yes.
And whereas middle school is of course becoming a 0, since you said that would be impacted by the split to secondary, but secondary is reduced. So it looks to me that in this instance, the dollars have been shifted down to elementary rather than secondary.
If we put 6th
With-
grade down there, there's a lot more kids in elementary than.
I understand that,
But that covers all the-
in all the other areas of the budget, pretty much you had said middle school was going to go with secondary.
Yeah. It's strictly
Expenses.
arbitrary. I mean, it does not make any difference whether they're assigned elementary or to secondary. I mean,
Because
if
of
it
the
would
cost.
please you to see more money at the secondary level, we could do that as well.
No, I'm just wondering, is that showing the reduced personnel according to these figures? I mean, the figures are changing
No.
drastically.
We've had 5 on staff for the last 2 years. You will recall, I believe it was 2 years ago, we reduced by 1. We
Right,
had
we
had
had 6.
6, and we went to 5 2 years ago. We've maintained the status quo with that for the last 2 years.
And the way we're budgeting it right now reflects the student population from kindergarten through 9th grade is roughly 10,000. The high school's going to have roughly 2,500. And that, that gives you a closer breakout to the way it is now, at least from a student population perspective. You're not indicating here that one is assigned at a particular school or a particular area. It's just
No,
a
and-
matter of breaking out the
And they're
salaries
shifted
that
according
way.
to need. Quite frankly, it'd be easier just to have a line item 5, psychologists, because they get shifted every year. Their assignments never remain the same.
Why don't we do that?
And you would see a couple of these with assignments at middle school and elementary. Or in
So why
fact,
don't we
high
put 'em
school and
all-
elementary.
High school and elementary.
Because
this
they're all
year.
bargaining unit employees, why don't we put it all in one line?
Well, because Dennis usually tells us what to do with that. So, like I say,
Blame it on Dennis.
it's easier for us to just put all in one line, but I'll question Dennis if we can do that. But if
Okay.
he says no, then you'll see it the same way.
All right, fine.
So it looks like most of the psychology use, that was at the middle schools was actually 6th grade, more so than
Now,
year
don't
7.
relate where we've got the money in the budget to the usage.
Not at all.
No,
Not at all?
no,
Get to
strictly
watch all the
arbitrary.
tapes yet.
Strictly arbitrary, in terms of where we've assigned, where I've assigned them. Page 65, or 64. Remember I told you the other night that my page number has a hole in it, so I can't always tell on that side of the page? These are the librarians. And you'll notice that, or be aware that we have not done anything differently with librarians this year or next year from this past year, this school year. We do budget some additional monies there for substitutes for librarians. On page 70, 22029, staff developer. In the past, we've had 2 different positions that were allocated to staff development. And I guess a year and a half or so ago, one of those positions was elevated to a supervisory position. This represents the one position that is a bargaining unit position. And even though the person that's serving in that position this year will not be there next year, we really feel we want to have that position. That's a very important position in the district.
Fred, without arguing the need for that position, the funding that goes, is that more than one person's full-time or a full-time person? Is that more than that?
What's represented there right now is one person,
Okay,
full-time, one full-time person.
okay.
123 is one person.
I
22029 is one person.
I may answer what I think may be your question a little bit later on.
That's the one, okay.
Okay.
If I don't, if you want to make a note, come back to it. On page 73, at the top of the page, 23001, board secretary, you see the asterisk there, which takes you to the back of the middle of page 75, and it says it reflects 25% of the director of community relations salary. Since Mr. Weir serves in that position, 25% of his salary is allocated to that particular position. An important page on 78. Employee relations. Again, you'll see the asterisk, and that salary reflects 2/3 of my salary plus my assistant's salary. The other 1/3 of my salary, if you recall from the other night, is allocated to transportation. I want to move down to page 79 with a couple different items that are there that I think we need to touch on. Down in the middle, 23,318, it says professional services, and then it says EAP. That money there is for the employee assistance program. If you move down to down at the very bottom of advertising, 23,535, a fairly significant over expenditure in terms of what we budgeted for advertising. I would say to you that this year has been an extraordinary year in terms of the types and the numbers of advertisings we've had to do. so that over expenditure reflects all the different kinds of things we've done for the superintendent search and for the directors searches and a lot of the other different searches we've been involved in. On the next page, if you look down at 23,701, that estimated expenditure we talked a little bit about before, that's where you would find the cost for the equipment for the substitute finder service, or for the substitute finder hardware.
What page are we on there, Fred? Okay, never mind, found it.
Just the next page. 80.
The one with the hole.
Yes. Every one of these is falling on a hole. If you look up the top there a little bit too, where it says negotiations and estimated cost, I want to point out that that estimated expenditure is all tied into things that relate to the strike, to payment for our advocate and other services that are related to the legal part of labor relations. None of that has anything to do with my salary. If we would turn to page 82, at the top of the page, 23,006, that is a strictly arbitrary figure for the sake of having some monies in the budget. Obviously, when the board has concluded its search, then the board will put whatever is appropriate there. If you would look at page 85, again, there is an asterisk at the top there, and it is explained a little bit later on, which on page 87, it includes 75% of the Director of Community Relations salary, and we mentioned that other where that other 25% was. And we also said that it reflects 80% of the assistant to the Director of School and Community Relations, and that the rest of that salary is back under the adult program, the other 20%. If you would turn to page 88, this is where you will find all the different principal salaries. There are no additional positions that are a part of this. All of the people who are in place now, we expect to be in the same places next year. You know that obviously we've had a replacement at Montgomery. You also know that sometime prior to the beginning of the school year in August, we'll have a need to have a replacement for Inglewood. The other positions there at the secondary level, they reflect the same numbers of people. On page 93, at the top of the page, 23,032, you'll see a new salary that is titled the Director of Curriculum, Staff Development, and also Data Processing. That's put into the budget for the purpose of having monies available to determine exactly what the reorganization will look like if the board has chosen to do anything different than what we talked about before. And David, is this what your other question was about?
No, Fred.
The staff development part?
That's fine.
Okay. I would say to you that the majority of that money comes from the elimination of the position of supervisor of staff development. So that a great deal, probably $65,000, $70,000, I think of that money was allocated last year for supervisors of staff development. We have eliminated that position.
That answers my question.
And in turn, we're looking toward the creation of a new position that would incorporate several different things. I'll deal a little bit more with that too when we get to the data processing area. The next line reflects the salary for the Director of Elementary Ed. As you well know, we still do have a Director of Elementary Ed, and unless the board chose to reorganize with eliminate that position, it would remain. The same thing is true of the Director of Secondary Ed. The 23035 reflects 4 different salaries for supervisors. That's the reading, math, English, and science supervisors. On page 99, you'll see from 2404 through 24008, the numbers of the monies allocated towards our school nurses. These are certified school nurses. They are members of the bargaining unit. And these positions reflect the same numbers of positions that as we have had for the past several years. We also have allocated some funding there for substitutes. On page 105, top of page. Yes, back up.
Nurses,
Uh-huh.
page 99.
Yes.
You see, for this current budget year, budgeted 99,000, estimated 33,498. But then reallocating 85,397. Why the difference between, such a big difference between estimated and budgeted? I mean, it's a positive difference.
Shows there's less kids in.
Not at senior high though. I'm talking senior high. There's like 63,000 or $66,000 difference.
Well, Penndale's
And then it's back up to almost the same level again for next year, in special?
The estimated is incorrect at this point in
Okay.
time, and I think as we get further down, perhaps that will reflect the difference. We have,
I think that came up earlier. I have a check mark.
Those
right here.
year-to-date figures, essentially?
yes.
Oh, generally, he is.
I think in reality, what it reflects at this point is probably a miscoding of some sort. So we have 2 people there, one full-time and one that's less than full-time. And we know that we're paying those people a lot more than 33,000 that reflects.
Okay, maybe he didn't, maybe it wasn't programmed for encumbered dollars or something of the sort. Okay.
Sometimes what happens is that on these kinds of runs for budget purposes, when there are people who are assigned to 2 different buildings, it gets messed up. But that's low even for accounting for that, because one person alone that's full-time there makes more than that 33,000.
Okay.
She's an experienced person. On 105, at the top of the page, 25001 is the Director of Finance. Although not an administrative position, I would point out that right below that is our purchasing specialist position. On page 109, the top of the page, our Director of Facilities and the Assistant Director of Facilities positions. And I'll bypass transportation because I think we talked enough about that the other night, unless you want to go back and talk about that again. If you'll move to page 126, and look at 28010 and 28012, because I'd like to talk about them together. We've talked a number of different times, and there's been a lot of thought given to try to do something to get the school district to a point where the data processing services meet the needs. And what these 2 different line items reflect, at the top, you'll see a budget of $23,830, an estimated of $18,495. Bill Hartenstein had part of his salary allocated to that line item, so that the budget and the estimated reflects Bill's prorated salary up to that point when he left. At the budget 95-96, it's $70,000. That's an allocation that's put in there for a new position. That new position would be titled Manager of, help me with it, David? Manager of Technology. And if you look at 28012, the difference between budget and estimate, a budget of 9495, and the difference between estimate and budget there is that we had somebody that was out for a protracted period of time on a leave of absence, so that the salary is a little bit different there. But the new budget reflects two new positions that are similar to the same level of positions that we have right now. And what we're asking for here would be an increase from two positions, the two people that we have right now, one that does primarily hardware, the other that does primarily software and training, that sort of thing, to two more positions of that same level. And David, perhaps you can help me with exactly what those titles are. And the other position would be the manager position. So we're saying we want to go from 2 to 5. The manager position would report to the new position that we budgeted, titled the Director of Curriculum, Staff Development, and Technology. And the intent here is to try and upgrade the district to the point where we can start to feel as though we really have a handle on not only administrative technology, but also instructional technology. We have limped along for a long period of time with the instructional technology, and we've piecemealed the administrative technology for a long period of time. This, I think, probably represents a minimal type of thing to get us where we need to be. And David, maybe you want to add something?
I just wanted to speak about one of the positions will be that of a network analyst. At this point in time in the district, we have 18 or more Novell networks. If you followed the history of the libraries and their automation projects over the past couple of years, each one of the buildings has a Novell network in there. That the eventual plan for that is to create a union catalog so that any person in any one of the libraries can see what's in any of the other buildings. With 18 different Novell networks that at this point are not connected, and the amount of money that we're spending on maintenance and administration through outside sources right now, we believe we can now justify that position to bring that in-house so that the expertise is here. Also, with the future of where we would like to go with technology, the combination of the new manager of technology to help what may be a position for director of curriculum and technology. Those people work hand in hand on doing a strategic plan for technology in-house and make sure that all purchases for technology are coordinated in the future.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, David.
And the last one that I would deal with is found on page 132, in the middle of the page, 32007, and that's the athletic director's salary. And that completes my part of it if you have questions.
Are we going to cover separately some of the green sheet information about the summer schedule for assistant?
Yes, Dr. Fike's going to talk about that a little bit later
Yeah,
on.
that's not part of the budget. Any other board questions of what Fred's covered?
I have a
Tom, any other?
Question page 79, back up. For GR North Penn Trans, that's greater TMA, correct?
Yes.
Just, do you feel we're getting the service for the money we're putting in? Where are we going with that? I have a question on that.
Yes, and I apologize for skipping over that because I meant to talk about that. The Greater North Penn Area Transportation Management Association is an organization that we joined about a year and a half or so ago. The primary impetus for joining that association was the employer trip reduction law that was going to require us to eliminate like 25% of all the cars, et cetera, that were coming into the different buildings, actually into the buildings that had 100 or more people. For all intents and purposes, that is dead. The employer trip reduction portion of the Clean Air Act has been effectively killed, I think, in Pennsylvania. So the requirement isn't going to be there to meet that standard. However, and I did talk with Tom last night a little bit, the Greater North Penn Area Transportation Management Association is tied into all the different traffic types of problems that exist in this Greater North Penn area. I've had conversations with the president of that association, as well as their assistant director, and a couple other people. I do happen to serve on one of the committees, the Trip Reduction Committee. And they would like to see us remain in the association simply because we do, as an employer with well over 1,200, 1,300 employees, bring some hardships into the area in terms of the transportation, in terms of traffic and everything else. I've asked several of them to come in, rather than me sit here and try to justify it completely. I've asked several of them to come in and meet with the committee of the board, so that we could then come back and present here at a later point in time in terms of the interest or the need for it. So I'm not really prepared tonight to say I really think we need to do this, but
Yeah, I'd definitely like to hear what they have to say when they come in before I'd be willing to support this.
Yeah. Many of the different communities in this area now belong to it. Upper Gwinnett just recently joined it. Hatfield Borough, Lansdale Borough. Many of the different communities that were part of the North Penn School District do belong to it. And I think it's a matter of trying to decide whether it's something that, as an employer in this area, we should be a good partner or whatever. So, in the next couple of weeks, I'll get that together and perhaps get back and ask the board to consider.
I originally did support it. I just questioned the results that we're getting as a district for the payment that we have to make to them, and what are we getting in return? And that's where I'd like to see some results.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Can you share any rationale, though, why when we were under the mandates and there was more concern for us having the services of meeting the requirements, and then they've been basically lifted, and yet the fee's almost 4 times higher now that
Well,
it
because
seems like there's less dependency.
No, Vicki, it's the same formula that was used the first year, but the first year we were only in for a very small portion of the year. We joined at a later point in time, so that the formula is exactly the same, and we paid this year based on the same way we paid the year before.
But we didn't budget any money at the beginning of this year and then joined back in, is that right? Because there was 0 budget funds in here?
That's a whoops.
Whoops, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I forgot this, what happened there.
Okay, thank you.
Gary? Ralph? Maybe Bill? Vicki, any more?
Yeah, no question.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the audience that would like to ask Mr. Schmidt about the personnel items on the budget?
I don't understand on page 88 what's happened to the middle school principals' salary. How are they presented?
On page 88, if you look down under Pembroke, there are 2 principal salaries included there. There's the principal and the assistant principal. Under Penfield, the same thing is true of principal and assistant principal. At Penndale, there's a principal and 2 assistant principals, and at the high school, there's a principal and 4 assistant principals.
Frankly, I didn't think it was high enough to cover that.
Mr. Taylor, just for the record, would you say your name?
Oh, my name is Taylor.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is, thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you.
That concludes the budget review over 4 nights. Now we'll get into the regularly scheduled agenda for the working session. Administrative compensation, your green sheet 3595, which I think is Dr. Fike.
Yes, Mr. President.
On the sheet labeled 3595, the board's aware of the labor dispute, and due to the labor dispute, all 210 employees, administrators, completed their year actually June 20th, or will complete their year June 20th. They worked through the strike. Therefore, the normal year ending on June 20th takes them into at least the 28th, when the students are here for the last day. And then there's a normal 10 days that the assistant principals work beyond the school year. And what I've done, I've broken this into two approaches: the 94-95 school year, where you are talking about wrapping up the 94-95, and then the normal additional summer work. The first sheet just shows you the 8 days that takes you through June 30th of 1995. 2 of those days are to complete the 94-95 work. And I'll say more about the 95-96 and the rest of 94-95, but the first sheet strictly those 8 days for those supervisors, elementary principals.
Any questions of Dr. Fike on this, Ralph?
Yeah, Dr. Fike, I know this has gone back and forth, but with Act 93 coming up and with a reorganization being discussed, I think that it would be wise to take a look at our 210-day employees, especially the assistant principals and those people that consistently get work, and take a look at them being 12-month employees. I think that's something that should be put into that mix to see, because if you look at the next sheet, when we get into the summer work, we're getting very close to it. And
I would agree.
And it may well be much more flexible for us to have them as 12-month employees, and it's been back and forth.
We have 10-month employees, or 210-day work year, working 230 this year. And that shows
Exactly,
up.
and I think we're getting now to the point where we ought to look at that again. Maybe it would be best for both of us, and we can work that out. Between Act 93, or the Act 93 and the reorganization, I think it should be looked at.
Terry? Any questions? Guys, go ahead, then I'll go at the end.
Question?
Go ahead, Bill.
Ray, or anyone, in view of why this happened, they were here during the strike, I would like us to, or someone to evaluate whether it was worthwhile doing it this way, having all these people in the schools, and nobody was there. And I obviously don't have the answer to that, but I think it's worth evaluating and have part of our contingency plan in the future as to how we staff the schools during a strike.
I think we did get some feedback after the strike that the principals that remained in the schools were extremely busy in terms of, at least initially, handling phone calls, discussing things with parents and things like that. So I don't know if we actually did a study of their time involvement over the entire time of the work stoppage, but I know initially they were very, very busy.
So I think it's worthwhile looking at again
Yeah.
and evaluating and making a.
I would always agree with that, but I'd also tell you that was a part of the contingency plan.
I understand that. What I said is, maybe let's evaluate it, and do we want to change it or not? And I'm not saying I do, but
Understand.
it's a lot of money for, what did we get for it?
I have a concern too. I think we had talked about at the time we would address at some point during the year how we would compensate them for the extra time worked. And I think at one time we had discussed possibly doing it on a comp time basis. Any thought to that, and in terms of how that would affect us? Give them comp time so that next year they could take time off as they needed to for these 8 days for these certain people. How would that affect us next year versus paying them cash right now?
It is a discussion that we've had in the past, and the fact is that because they have a 210-day calendar, their calendar parallels the teacher calendar, the student calendar during the regular school year. so that if you gave them the comp time, the only time they'd be able to take that, the time that they more than likely would take that would be instructional time.
Right.
We kind of felt that was not a good idea to have them away at that time.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to switch hours that are served for an essentially empty school, whether there's phone calls coming in or not, than for active school days. But I would agree with Bill about evaluating this, but I'd like to see a full evaluation of the staff expenses that were incurred during that time, that from the as a result of the
We
strike.
are
a
capturing
full-
all the data that relates to the strike, and this year that has other expenses that are like this further away from the strike itself. And we'll have some kind of report for you at some point in time when we think that that's the end of the expenses for this year.
I think that perhaps a compromise on this, and, you know, hopefully we won't have to deal with this for quite a while, but maybe half-time or scattered days so that parents have a way to access without necessarily having no one available at their building. Of course, they always do have the Educational Service Center for questions, rather than having so much staff involved in contingency.
One more item. This is another reason why a 12-month for these folks would be much more worthwhile. But I think that the actual payment for this day, these days, is a part of our strike contingency planning. The board made a conscious effort to keep those buildings open and available to the public in the maximum amount of time. Because of this situation, we don't have them on 12 months. We're paying them some extra days, but I really believe strongly that that was exactly the right decision. I personally don't think it needs review much. It was the right thing to do. We've got to keep the buildings open to the community, and we can't cut back. When we have those buildings open, we've got to have the kind of staff that's reflected here there to take care of those buildings. I think it was a good decision, and I think that if we try to do comp time later on, we're going to cut back on the kids for next year. I think it's much better to just pay them and look at 12 months for next year.
Thanks, Rob. Any other questions of Dr. Fike on this item? Any questions from members of the audience? Okay, if we want to move on to the second session, Dr. Fike?
Yes, I think it's going to be helpful if, you need two here for the, if you see what we've done in the past. I took the time to go back to 93 and in May of 93 and also May of 94 to understand what North Penn does with 210 work year employees. So I want you to know that I'm working from a base of experience in North Penn. If you look at this sheet, what's called normal, the 210 employees, 210 workday employees, following the last school day, they spend 10 more days winding up or wrapping up the school year, okay? Basically, they come in 3 weeks during the summer, 2 weeks afterwards, and then the other 5 days they work when you have in-service. So that accounts for your 210 days. The additional summer work, the 35 days, are split as you can see, 7 days for Penfield, 7 days for Pembroke, 6 each for the Penndale, and then the 35 for the North Penn High School. And there's your total. And this is exactly what you've been doing for the last 2 years that I went back over the records. Now, last year was a little bit different because you had the snow days, and administrators had to work into July. Well, this year is no exception because we had the labor dispute. If you look at the second block, the principals completed their 210 at June 20th, and therefore 216, the 6 additional days, would take you to when the students leave. Does that make sense? The 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 26th, 27th, 28th. So those 6 days, before the students leave, they have 216 days working. they normally, and I put normally, would have put 10 more days after the students leave to wrap up the school year, and then their 35 additional summer work days. And there's your total. That would have been normal. What I'm proposing, and this is in conjunction with the principals, is on the back side of this sheet. Same 216. Now, the reason I broke the complete 94-95, the 2 days fall in the 94-95 fiscal year, the 5 days fall in the 95-96 fiscal year, and instead of being 10 in there as normal, we have 7. They're going to reduce their number of days from 10 to 7. And then again, the additional summer work is 38 as opposed to 35. We actually have 20 days at the high school for scheduling, and the other 3 assistants work 6 days. That gives you a total of 1848. If you summarize the days normally, the normal, if you use the current calendar, would have been 1869. We're proposing 1,848 days. We're 21 days short of what we normally would have paid our 210 employees. Now, I'll try to answer questions. To me, this makes logical sense, but I deal in matrices and numbers. If you have questions, please ask.
Splitting this into 2 plus 5 essentially puts 2 days in the 94-95 budget year and the other 5 in the next budget year.
Correct.
Okay,
That's correct. And I did that for Dennis's benefit because he has to show that.
all right.
And if you want to see this line item, there's a line item on page 88. It says additional administrative support. That amount, that's what that's covered. It's in the budget now.
Ray, will you show me either on the green sheet or on this, what this all costs us? Please?
Yes. I happen to have that too.
Big straight man, aren't you? Did I say it the way you told me to?
Good job, Fred.
As Mr. White's mentioned, I broke it down into the 94-95 fiscal year, and you can see the total for the principals, supervisors, the 4 in instruction, the 4 special ed, and the 8 assistant principals. That's your total for 94-95, above and beyond what was budgeted. Then 95-96, each elementary principal will work 3 additional days in the 95-96 school year. The supervisors are working 6, and I didn't put the number of days per administrator because 1 person isn't working and 3 are. And then the supervisor special ed, they are working 4 additional days. And then the assistant principals, I couldn't tell you how many days per administrator because that will vary. Like Mr. Hine will do the scheduling of 20 days, where the other assistants put in 6 days. So that varies. So your total then is the total for 95-96, and Mr. Allen, that's a grand total for both fiscal years. Okay?
Thank you. But
Over and
again,
above.
I want to understand,
Go ahead.
this is, these are strike-related costs?
Well,
strictly, and
the strike-related would be the 94-5, and part of 95-6, because you're finishing up your 94-95 duties into July. So it's not all strike-related. The strike-related,
the 72 is,
yes,
That's
and
100%.
Yes.
part of the 52.
and part of the 52, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
That's correct. And you mentioned about administrators. I really think that they're part of the management team, and you have to keep them on your team during the strike. There are strike contingency plans they work with the parents. They surely work with the board of trying to start up school again, when you're going to start rearranging schedules. So they are part of the management team. Now I'll answer any other questions. Do these two make sense as far as, yes?
You've confused me.
Go ahead.
If that answers your question. On the green sheet, we have 72,570 to compensate them as a result of the labor dispute and you're saying that takes care of the normal work year?
Not quite.
Okay. When I read this as being, we've completed the year, we're paying them for 8 extra days, and here's what that total
I
cost
think
is.
that's up till the students leave.
It's up to the students' leave, and the 2 additional days at 8 is part of the wrap-up year for 94, 95. They would have normally worked 10 days after the students left.
Okay,
I'm saying they're gonna work 2 in the 94, 95, and 5 in the 95, 6. They're only gonna work 7 of the normal 10 days to wrap up the 94, 95 school year.
meaning the 3 carryovers are shown on 95, 96.
Well, the 3 carryovers,
Either can be worked or not worked.
they're gonna be dropped. They're not gonna work 10, they're only gonna work 7.
All right. So,
Okay.
so now are we saying for 95, 96, we're gonna use those in July to supplement or to complete the work that we talked about here on the green sheet? Or is that for work that will be done prior to school starting in the fall?
No. Let's just take one assistant principal.
Okay.
He works 6 days, finishes the
Wait,
school
which-
year with students. Okay?
All right,
Normally, he'd have worked 10 more days
right,
to wrap up the 94, 95 school year.
okay.
He's gonna work 7 days instead of 10. 2 will be in the 94, 95, 5 will be in the 95, 96 fiscal year.
That's over here, all right.
Then the normal summer work, the scheduling, the meeting of parents, exams, doing the student handbook, the teacher handbook, that's just normal. That's just reported as a normal summer work schedule.
Okay, got that. It just doesn't, something seems out of balance to me. If we're talking 8 days for the same types of people, and it's 72,570, and now we're doing what appeared to me to be an average of about 7, because we were looking at the additional summer work, at least up here. Why is that only 52?
Because the principals, elementary principals, there are 13 of them working 8 days. When you go into 95, 96, 12 of them are only working 3 days. If you look at 95, 6,
Right, I see that.
the elementary principals are only working 3 days in the 95, 96
Yeah,
school year.
maybe what I'm not seeing is the total number of days worked, and
Yeah.
that's what's confusing me,
Yes.
because the numbers don't seem to balance between the costs and the number of people working.
Okay.
I think now you've broken the code for me. Now I have to do some little adding myself here.
That's one of the reasons I thought I'd do this summary, Mr. Bowman. If they would have worked the normal 10 after the school year ends and the normal summer work, they'd have worked 1,869 days for the year.
Right.
However, because they're not working those full 10 days, they work 1,848. So they're working 21 fewer days than they would on a normal condition.
And that includes the summer of 95 work.
Correct.
Any other questions? Terry, Tom, Ralph, David, Vicki? Any questions from members of the audience? Who hopefully aren't as confused as I was. Okay, we want to move on to the summer program now, or the total, in terms of discussing the summer school principal?
Yes, we're recommending Mrs. Dickerson to serve as the summer school principal, and that will start July 5th. And all expenses, at least in the past, have been borne by the tuition, so it's self-supporting.
Guess if I study the recommendations here closer, then I can add up the number of people and days, and that'll get me the right numbers. That's what I didn't break out before.
Will this be Mrs. Dickerson's first year?
Yes. As the
Dr.
summer
Bowman.
school.
That's right.
Bo was last year, or the last few. Okay, any questions on the summer school principal? Okay. Next item on the agenda, if I can find my agenda again. Too many pages. What's the next thing on the agenda? Textbooks. Whose is that?
Secondary textbook.
Okay. Dr. Pike.
Yes. This is a year that the science textbooks are to be implemented. It's like a 2-year study between the planning and the actual decision with regard to textbooks. And we have listed the 5 textbooks on the green sheet, 3395, which lists where the books are applicable as far as grade level, content, and also includes the number. If you want a total for those science, it's $130,176.
Okay, you want to take them by category and get questions on the categories? Questions?
I have one question. The foreign language books, are they included in the 130?
No. You said
No, only the first 5 are science. There's not any
Okay,
foreign
I thought
language there. In fact, I think I only have one foreign language.
There's
That's
only
the
one.
last
There's only one at the very bottom,
Yeah.
that's why I asked, was that included in that figure?
No, it's not. Only science. Total I gave is $130,176.
And the Latin are 30 times 175.
Latin is $5,250.
Okay, we'll just cover all the books. Questions down here? Bill?
As much as I'd like to impress you and tell you I read these, I didn't. I'll have to be honest, but the question is, are these books replacing obsolete information, or are these books replacing worn out and destroyed books that we don't have enough of and we can't get new printings, or is it a combination?
Well, when you look through, like Astronomy Today, the current text is outdated. The Foundation of Astronomy, that's outdated. It's a 1985, both of those are 1985 copyrights. And the selected textbooks and the department does this, isn't a selection just by Dr. Brown. Biology, same thing, was a 1985, so the 10-year copyright. And it is the current material. It's not repeating what was in the previous books or having the same content.
Dr. Fike, before you leave that biology book in 10th grade, number 3, we had a problem this year in getting the 10th grade biology books from the publisher. We selected a new one last year, and we didn't get the books in until February. You know, if this is the same book, I'm concerned that, you know, we just went through that. Is it for a different level?
That I don't know. I wouldn't know what we ordered last year, but I'll find out.
We need to check with Don on that, and I know that full well because my son was a 10th grade 6.0 biology student and didn't have a book until February, and I was in close contact with Mrs. Brown on that, and you know, it was through a comedy of errors of, you know, not getting the order in, then it's changing the publication date and the printing edition number, and we didn't get them in until the students were already finished their second quarter. So, you know, I'm concerned that we just bought 10th grade biology books, and if it's for the same level class, then, you know, we're duplicating here, and we need to cut that out.
I'll find out.
Level 6.
Said 6.0 level, Dick?
No, but it was my understanding that these were gonna be used for all the biology classes, so you know, I'd like a reading on what that is. All the others have, or most of the others have 5.0 or 6.0 or whatever students, you know, are gonna use the text, and now all of a sudden that one doesn't, so. Yeah, if it's for a 4 or 5 level, then we need to find out. And if that's the case, you know, fine. Any other questions on the textbooks?
I had one question. We're planning to vote on this at the
Thursday.
at the Thursday meeting. When it says that they're available for review in the curriculum office, often we're out here. Are they?
They're in
across
the
hall?
room across the hall on the table. I can answer your question, Mr. Bowman. The biology books are for tech prep.
They're new.
That makes
That's what
a
it
big
says
difference.
right here.
And we started biology, and we put in 3 tech prep in the 10th grade, 3 in 11th, and 1 in the senior high. But these are for the tech prep. I have what we call the adoption from the department here.
Okay. is
Both
that-
of these?
Which one?
No, that's number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 is for tech prep.
And so is number 4. It says for 10th grade biology tech prep. Number 4 says it's for tech prep.
Right. That's a visualizing life, that's tech prep.
That's what it says for 10th grade.
Better ask Donna about that,
Oh,
because
wait.
Yeah, now we have, how many
Oh,
tech
wait.
prep students are we gonna have?
The first biology is for biology 5.0, the 5th level.
Number 3?
Number 3 is for 5th level.
Okay, 5L. Okay. I didn't think that.
The other's 4.0?
Okay. Well, they don't call tech prep 4.0, it's just tech prep.
So number 3 is not for tech prep, it's for 5.0?
No, number 3 is biology
Number 4 is tech
5.0,
prep
number
only.
4 is tech prep.
Okay,
I'm gonna say.
because number 4 said tech prep. Yeah, all right, so that's 5.0.
Any others?
Is that, well, we
It says tech
yeah,
prep.
just to have Donna check that out, is that consistent with the book that we just got? And if it's the same publisher and printer, we want some guarantees from them that they're gonna be here on
Okay.
September 1st. None
Will
of this
do.
February delivery stuff.
And Ray, if you would check on one other thing for me, the item number 1, Astronomy Today with a copyright of 1993. Just make sure that that is the most current edition. There has been an awful lot of new information in astronomy, considering the book was probably written in 1992. That makes it 3 years, no Hubble Space Telescope,
It's
lots of
fall
things. Could they check and just make sure that is the most current?
Okay, all they have here is current information, so.
Just like them to check again and make sure that there isn't a book that's coming out in 1995.
Will do.
Okay, Vicki?
Yeah, my questions would be on these, if, between now and next Thursday, we get copyright dates, and I know I've brought this up before, but I prefer to know if they're supplemental or replacement books, when they were last purchased, because many of the books don't really change over as far as copyright goes, and it doesn't give you a perspective as to how long you've actually been using your current text, the replacement. If you understand, you can have a copyright of 1985, but you may have just purchased the books in 1991, and therefore weren't in use when we're dealing with replacements. This one that is for 10th grade tech prep, I think that perhaps if you don't already know, talk to Juan, that 400 for a single grade level in the specific area of biology. For 110th graders, that's an awful lot for that single topic at that one grade level.
But it's not necessarily 4th grade, 10th grade.
Well, it says for 10th grade biology students.
But
And
it
it's a
could be
5.0.
11th grade tech prep taking a 10th grade biology.
No, I'm talking number 3, biology 5.0, the one that you just looked up.
Right.
The 5.0 course. I mean, that's only those students taking the 5.0 biology, I assume.
I would think that that's probably about right.
Pardon?
Figuring there's 900 in a class, biology's the required science in 10th grade. You figure 200 or so in tech prep, that puts you down to 700.
No, I'm only talking about 10th grade biology, not
Yeah,
the
that's
tech
what I'm
prep books. The tech preps are separate.
What I'm trying to do, Vicki, is to show
Yeah.
you why there's probably 400 5.0 biology students in 10th grade. If you take 900 in a class, you subtract out the tech prep 2 to 300, say 300, that leaves you 600. Put 100 in the 6.0 classes and 100 in the 4.0 classes, now you have probably 400 in the 5.0 classes. Make sense? That's just a guess on my part, but it would.
I'll get the breakdown for you then.
I just thought that's an awful large number there, and I assume this is a total replacement of the total textbooks that are there? That are non-existing right now?
Has to be, it's a 95.
Right.
Copyright.
It says copyright 1985.
No, on the
No,
new
that's
ones,
the old
new
one.
ones are 1995.
Oh, okay, I
Copyright.
got you. I see, sorry, but you meant.
Actually, I'll have as of Thursday, I'll have a copy of all the course selections from the high school, so we'll know how many are taking biology.
But one final question, is this the purchase of these textbooks in this fiscal year or next fiscal year?
Next fiscal year.
They're
There's a
not
line item of
until after-
$271,000 for textbooks. The science represents $130,000 of that.
But we can get them on order this
Yes.
year and invoice
As soon as the
them
board approves, we
Ju-
can cut a
July.
PO and order them.
I'm just
Probably ordered and just delivered after.
very aggravated by the violation.
Yeah,
Any other
we can wait
questions?
till July if that's the case.
Yeah. Any other questions of the board on the textbooks? Any questions from the audience on the textbooks? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Dr. Fike, you're a popular person tonight. What do we have?
Oh.
Secondary courses under 20. This is always a good one for discussion. Let me find my green sheet here, I guess.
This is Green Sheet 3295. The school board has a policy where we bring to you the courses that fall under 20, and a recommendation, and this is mostly high school, but as you notice, there's one from Pembroke and one from Penndale, and recommending where you may have a less than 20, we may still be recommending and how many sections of those classes. I don't have any specific questions. Number 2 is the courses to be dropped because of enrollment and recommendation of the principal, and then where we can combine them. We do that and recommend those courses with the numbers as indicated.
I'm still shuffling papers, Dr. Fike. I'm trying to find my one with my comments on it. Ah, here it is. Tom, go ahead.
Well, she has, I'll turn it over to Terry. We were just talking about one class.
The high school English 10th grade English for gifted. Are
Yes.
we required on the numbers? Because if you break that into 3 sections, 3 to 4 more students doesn't seem like that much, especially at the gifted talent level.
Terry,
And
that
then
that
state
makes
guidelines.
logical sense, and then we have the state regulations
That's
for
what I'm
for gifted
asking.
education, and I guess it's hard to apply logic to that. The regulations, we've been back and forth with the state. There was a proposal to change the guidelines to 18 to 20. In actuality, they still have 15 on the books right now, that you can only have 15 students in the class. I know it makes no sense because many of these children are in classes, AP classes with many more students, but that's the way the state regulations read right now. So in essence, in some of those classes, we're even above. Now, we can apply for an exception to that, and generally, they'll give us a little bit of latitude. But the reality is, it still remains at 15. This was proposed,
So we
and it's
need
still
5.
not been voted on. So, that, the program for gifted that you see there, if you remember, the gifted task force gave their report, and it's an interdisciplinary course for English and social studies. Last year was in the 10th grade. This year, the proposal was to move it to the 11th grade.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
Please. What would happen if we dropped the course entirely?
That is our program for gifted students, and we had a committee. It's filed with the state on the plan that Dick and Tom Persing signed. Every year, you can't drop it.
Okay.
Put it someplace.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I signed with reservations.
As long as Dick and Tom are, you can do anything you want, Bill.
Right. You don't have to vote, Dick.
I had to.
Can you tell us how many on here? Then really, this is not up for discussion.
No,
Not that one.
We just have to approve it, and then we have
Right.
to ask for the exception.
right,
And world culture's gifted.
right.
No
But
discussion.
we can look at some of these other items
Okay.
that,
Magazine journalism.
Not
Yeah,
unless
that-
you can work the numbers to keep it 15 or less.
Anything
I-
gifted is
Right now, with
stuff.
12 kids, I don't think it's worth it to have that, I'm sorry, we were on the magazine journalism, since that's one that's not mandated by the
Right.
state.
12.
12 kids, I'm sorry, that's too low for me to want to support. Any other members of the board on that?
I was going to ask about that, because, as important as it is, it was an addition. I believe it was brought in maybe 2 years ago, supplemental to our other journalism course. And at the time, I was a little surprised we were adding one, because I used to always find that journalism course listed on here too. So it seemed to be, dividing that very same population that they would draw from into a third breakout is what concerned me when we were adding it, considering the other is often under-enrolled. Have you looked at that specifically, Dr. Fike, as far as whether there can be a blending of the other journalism course or curriculum course?
I need a little direction though. Do you normally discuss these the night that you're looking at to approve them, and therefore I should have Dr. Bond here? Because he may, just an example, and we did this last year, I found out, he may give that one to someone as their sixth teaching period, like he did the Latin. Remember that question was raised by the public, why do they have 8 in the Latin class? Well, he made that a sixth teaching period, and therefore you approved it.
He's
But
been
if you,
here in the past.
I'd like to know which ones you have questions on, and then I'll have
That's what I
Dr.
think for
Bond.
next Thursday, no
Well, that's
big
one.
deal, that's what we're, we're not approving.
Portfolio honors, I want
Also
to know more about that.
magazine journalism course, just to add to the discussion, is that one of the courses where most of the kids that take that move into a club, which are those the ones that go into the yearbook?
Accolade?
Accolade more
Yearbook
likely.
club,
That's a separate
No, I mean, there's another journalism course, I'm trying to think which.
Yes, there are several other jokes.
There's a number of journalism courses, newspaper goes the night prior, there's one that goes into the yearbook.
I'll see if it's a prerequisite for something.
But
Figure it
12
out.
I'm not
students,
sure
I
it's a
would look.
prerequisite, but many of the students that take that courses are participants on the staff of those publications. That was
This is
the
a new
concern.
course, this is a relatively new course.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
there's
it was
any.
only 2 years, it
Just
can,
Yeah.
more information.
I'd look for blending, incorporation with the other existing course.
Any other items? I have some questions about, Dr. Fike, if you'd put down the portfolio honors, what that's all about. And I have no problem, having a reading improvement class. I was concerned, even though they're minor classes, that they're 18 to 20s. In terms of classroom size guidelines, why are those classes so small?
Normally reading.
Yeah, I would think a reading improvement class is probably how to hone your skills. And when I was in high school, took speed reading, and it may well be that type of course, but I'd like to understand about it. And the study skills with 55 divided by 2 makes that a normal classroom of 27 or so. Why can't we have 2 classes that instead of 3?
Yeah, I don't understand the guideline of 18 to 20 on that, I guess.
Yeah.
These I copied from your policy, so
Maybe there's some
I don't-
adjustment.
Yeah, they're gonna
those
blame me
actually
that I
were the
signed
same
it wrong.
guidelines used last year, so.
We had the list this long last year too.
Just to make sure on Pembroke, geometry is normally it's given in 10th grade, and these are kids that have already taken Algebra 1 and
That's
2 and
correct.
are now in
That's
geometry.
correct.
So that's great for the advanced kids there. Question down, when we get to Japanese
2 and 3.
2 and 3, combining those together into 15 for one total section.
That's correct.
Technically, shouldn't that, if we're gonna combine it, then we also should approve that as being less than the classroom guidelines? True?
In other words, it belongs in both categories nonetheless.
Yeah, it's
Well, what are the guidelines for that course?
a 25 to
Oh, I see.
28
25
for
to
each.
28.
Sorry.
You're right. It needs to go up on the list.
You're not questioning the
Well-
option, but you'd rather
Right.
have it up on
Yeah,
the
well,
one.
I guess we have to
Okay.
do 2 things on that. We have to vote or approve that, yes, it's okay to combine them. And then if we combine them, now is it still warranted to have it at 15 students? And possibly that's effective that way. And I think the same with putting the electronics classes together, are we limited there in terms of 24 students by the size of the electronics lab or the lab that they do this in? You know, I mean, it says that the classroom size is that a tech prep course?
It's not a
or-
tech prep course. To me, it'd be industrial arts, but I'm not sure. Mr. Wood, maybe you can help me out.
Technology, industrial arts with a limited number of lab-full teaching stations.
And that's what I would suspect, that we did that.
That's why it's listed at 14 to 16.
Okay, so if we're limited in the terms of the number of classroom spaces or that we can use in the room, then that falls under the acceptable category. One more question on challenges of the aging adult up under courses to be dropped. Even though we're dropping it, why did we have a classroom guideline of 16 to 18 on that thing?
21 signed up.
I know.
Challenges of the aging adult.
Dick, I'm one of those 21 that signed up.
Are you one of the ones that the 21 signed up to come visit or take care of?
You're part of the challenge.
Come and draw me.
I'll have to find it. He can answer why they're dropping it. I really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like if 21 kids signed up for it, we can accommodate them in the class, even though it's, the guidelines are 16 to 18, and I don't know if that's a class where they go do a lot of field work and go to homes or whatever.
How about also computer programming 3 and 4, when you look at that, they should be pretty well along into computer programming. Why would we need that break down into 2 sections of 15 when we're that close to the guideline?
Equipment.
Equipment, right? We don't have 30 computers in any one classroom at the school.
We have 29, but we don't have 30.
We don't have 29. I think
It says
the
guidelines,
Class size
26 to
guidelines, yeah.
29.
guidelines are there, but the greatest number, I think, is either 20 or 21 computers in a room.
So this
Well,
is
if
another
we
guideline.
have, if we have 9 kids waiting for one to free up, couldn't we have 10 kids waiting for one to free up?
Well, the 2 sections, there's 15 then. The 30 goes into 2 sections of 15.
No, but I'm saying the class size
And they all get their
guideline is
computer.
29.
I don't know why the class line guidelines are there.
If we don't have the computer,
Maybe the
we
guideline's
gotta
wrong.
change the guideline.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Or get a
it's
big
probably a
room and
decent
put more
guideline.
power
You
to
don't have
put
the
more
room
computers in it.
You don't have the room with the computers, and the guidelines aren't wrong.
Let's buy more computers.
Right.
Or move them into a bigger room so you can accommodate more of the students.
Ray, I have a question about electricity, electronics. Is that the same thing that's being taught at the Voc Tech School?
I would think that's an industrial arts approach where you would, I'm just, from my past experience, that it's treated as industrial arts, and Tech would take 5 days a week the whole year. Would that be a good analysis, Mr. Wood? You have to help me since that's your
correct.
field.
That's correct. This is just this is not the in-depth type of work that you'd be doing at the tech school to prepare you to go out with the skill to become a registered electrician or work in the field of electronics.
Well, then, I'd have to, what's the purpose of it?
Purpose of it is, it's an exploratory technology, industrial arts kind of course. Someone coming out of that course, Bill, may be going on to become an electronic engineer or an electrical engineer.
Okay.
Would a tech prep student take that, for sure?
Any other questions regarding the courses? Board members? Everybody over here okay? Over here? Okay, any members, yes ma'am?
Karen Clark, Montgomery Township. This is a very personal question so that I can go home today, and when my son asks me what I did at the school board meeting, I can tell him. I don't see it on here, so I'm going to hope that Japanese 1 is going to be offered next year.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can go home and tell him it was a good meeting.
As well, Mrs. Clark.
It wasn't below classroom guidelines.
And if he had finished 1, he would have 2 next year, possibly. He has to sign up for it, and it has to be warranted. Any other questions from the
Yeah.
audience regarding the, I'm sorry, Bill,
I have a
are you in the
question.
audience? I'm just kidding.
That I,
Go ahead.
Mrs. Clark brought up. If we're going to continue to offer Japanese 1, I think we have a moral obligation to continue the program through 2 and 3, regardless of who signs up, or we eliminate one now and just say it's an experiment that didn't work. But you can't have somebody get into it for a year or two and then cancel it. I don't think that's right.
One of the things I think the district should look at, and it's possible with the technology, you can do some of these by the use of technology, where you can actually beam in and the kids who watch the program with even instructors going beyond Japanese 1. There's a lot of avenues that do foreign languages rather than just have a classroom teacher. But I would, if you have the numbers and you've offered Japanese 1, the decision whether they take 2 or 3, I think your problem is you don't have enough to go to 3, 4. That's why you're combining it, but Japanese 1 is still healthy. I'll find out again tomorrow, Thursday, how many are actually signed up for Japanese 1. I think we'll be surprised.
It didn't make
It didn't
low,
make anyone-
under,
No, one
classes under
didn't,
20.
but it seems like they're dropping out. They're not continuing.
Oh, sure.
And
That's a normal sequence.
but it just doesn't seem right to let somebody take something thinking he can get 3 or 4 years of it, and then to cut it out from under him because some other people dropped out. We have to decide, we keep
Bill,
it or we
I
don't.
think 2 years of a language is not an abnormal sequence, and I guess in foreign languages, a lot of kids take 2 different foreign languages for 2 years. That's not at all an unusual sequence. I think that there should be a commitment, if we say Japanese 1, that you're gonna have 2, so that the kids can finish it, so they do finish a normal sequence. But I would be interested in knowing how many kids this year are in Japanese 2, and what's that fall-off rate like? Is it,
Not yet.
and see how many are coming into 1, to see if they're falling off the edge at
See,
12.
we're assuming, though, you're taking Japanese 1 as a 10th grader. You could start as a junior and only get 2 years in. Right?
Yes, I didn't mean in a building, I meant in the district, in our curriculum.
But I'll find out how many are taking Japanese 1 and 2 this year.
Well, there's 12, according to this, there's 12 students taking Japanese 2.
That's for
That's
next
the
year.
request for next
Oh,
year.
next year, you asked, I'm sorry.
Right. He wants for this year.
Yeah, how many this year are going on to
Same
3?
12.
Okay, any other questions from the audience or board members? Board members first, we'll go through this again. Any other questions from the
Sorry,
audience? Mr. Taylor?
I am Bill Taylor from Lansdale. I think this came up last year, but are there any built-in obstacles to considering teaching these very small group classes in cooperation with, say, Souderton on an evening, as is for a lab, once a week? Can we do something like that? Because I personally have a resistance to watching a TV set talk to me and trying to keep up with it. I would think languages would be a particularly sensitive subject that way, so would various musical arts. And if that is not categorically ruled out, I certainly urge you to consider it.
We have a lot of this in our community education programs, don't we also? Ken, do we have it even within our community ed program?
We would offer a 10-week course at most.
In Japanese?
But it has, not Japanese, no, but a number of these.
The problem you have of off in the evening, the kids you're talking about
Right, wouldn't come.
probably are loaded with 35 or 36 periods out of 36 periods, and I don't know if they even attend an evening program to boot, but something you may want to pursue, but I don't think they'll sign up for an evening course in addition to a full academic load.
But Ray, picking up on what you had said earlier, though, distance learning, Mr. Taylor, is something that's on the advent of what's going to be happening in Pennsylvania and indeed in all of the United States, utilizing the satellite TVs to downlink, to communicate and to cooperate among schools. There's a large, perhaps I think in the neighborhood of a $10 million grant to Lehigh University, who has been working with this for perhaps 2 to 3 years. And that has already been developed, and we've participated in classes whereby that's an interactive TV meaning that the teacher can talk to each one of the students and have 3 or 4 students in 5 or 6 or 10 schools simultaneously. So it can be done. It's only a question now of linking things together. Your point is well taken.
We had looked at that prior to going into the Japanese. That was, matter of fact, I had a presentation at the board one night.
Now you have a
It
sound.
was SERB, wasn't it? SERB. SERB, S-E-R-B.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience concerning the classes? If not, that's the last item on the agenda, so we're adjourned.
I wanted to thank you.